up, you guys? So we are now heading into our 26th week of pregnancy. It's just one baby this time for those of you who have been with me for this entire crazy time period where I was literally a mother of 3 children, living in my own home, minding my own business, literally minding and running my own businesses, to a pregnant, terrified, incredibly abused and oppressed woman, to what I am now, which is half numb, half strong mother who is displaced and desperately seeking answers to what could have caused this and what continues to allow it to continue. If we're starting at the beginning, what kind of business have I done? Every kind. So I've worked in hospitality, I've worked in staffing, I've worked in event planning, I've worked in promotions. My longest W-2 type of job was in the hospital system, working with Northwestern Hospital, St. Alexis, Alexian Brothers and affiliates. Affiliates of Northwestern. Northwestern started out in private practice as Chicago Lakeshore Medical Associates, which was an independent physician's office of about anywhere from 20 to 40 physicians at any given time, at the 676 building, the St. Clair, 676 North St. Clair Arcus Pavilion. And I was there for approximately 5 years before they got purchased by NMFF, Northwestern Medical Faculty Foundation. And then ultimately, I believe they got purchased by Northwestern Medical Physicians Group, or Northwestern Physicians Group. And Northwestern basically took over. They acquired or purchased the independent physicians' offices in the area, and really kind of just took over that space. After leaving the medical field, I went into sales and marketing. In the optical field, I was there for a short time, 6 months to a year, while also working out obsessively, prepping to compete NPC with a personal trainer and a prep coach. My trainer was Manny of Export, and my prep coach was Christian McCoy, who would travel around training people in various states and places. I saw myself go from 70 pounds of like soft fat to like under 20% body fat in about 6 months, I'd say, which is dramatic, but you have to be super committed and dedicated to that. So my schedule looked something like I would wake up my 3 children, or my oldest, tell her that I was going to the gym, that she had 1 more hour to sleep or an hour and a half to sleep. We lived in the basement of my ex-husband, Orlando, not really marriage husband, but the father of my child. We lived in the basement of his grandmother's house. So early in the morning while everyone was still sleeping, she would be there. There wasn't even a lock on the door going up and down, but it was like an apartment in that I had my own kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms. There was a laundry room, but I couldn't really use it. I would sneak sometimes and use it if there was an emergency, but for the most part I used the laundromat. And so my life was not easy, being 3 children, working full-time, waking my oldest, who was 12 at the time, and telling her if there's a problem, get Mama Nellie, I'll be back in an hour, and then going to the gym for my first round of training, coming back home, eating breakfast, waking up the kids, getting them dressed, sending them off to school with a cereal bar or, a donut and some chocolate milk, or whatever they wanted, fruit, whatever, or, just barely making it home from the gym with enough time to say, oh my God, everyone hurry up and get up. They went off to school. I went back to the gym for my cardio session, and did religiously, like it was my job, 45 minutes on the stairs in a zone 2, which for me was a level 5 or 6, because I was coached into believing that keeping your heart rate into a zone 2 is optimal for burning fat while also building muscle. I would drink BCAAs and protein. I would eat 5 very, very specific meals each day, and 6 months of that is what brought me to the point where I was, and I don't even feel I was nearly close enough to competing as most people would imagine. So it's definitely a very rough lifestyle. I would take my meals in a 6-pack bag to my job, and then I would go back home, and my children would get dropped off around 5. If it was one of my late nights at work, they would get dropped off at the actual eye doctor that I worked at. And then I would spend 3 days a week off, because we were off Mondays, with my children, you know, just hanging out or going to the park or museums or the zoo or, you know, whatever, cleaning my house, reorganizing or rearranging the furniture in my home, etc. and so forth. I always did my best to be the mom that listened to her kids and gave her kids an opinion. What do you want to eat? What do you want to do? What do you want to, you know, watch? While also trying to be as healthy as possible on a very, very tight budget. I would get, you know, a little bit of wiggle room around income tax time. But other than that, I was paycheck to paycheck. And I was working, as I said, with bachelor's degree credits, more credits than a bachelor's degree requires, and numerous outside certifications of medical, phlebotomy, personal training, just various relevant courses to my field. I went back to school after attending 2 community colleges and transferred to AIU, American Intercontinental University, with 3 small children. Transferred my major from nursing due to not being able to go to in-school clinicals or on-campus clinicals, which means that you work for free and work a full-time job while supporting 3 small children. So I worked as much as I possibly could while also doing homework and being a present, available mother for my children. With my 3rd pregnancy, Alexis, so I have Viviana as my oldest, Lewis is the middle, and Alexis is the baby. She's 10, the oldest is 17, and my son is 15. I almost died. I had Alexis, and I noticed immediately after I gave birth to her, she was in induction because she was 2 weeks late, and I was on a Pitocin drip. And I had read a lot about some of the potential downfalls of using Pitocin to induce pregnancy. One of them was an increased possibility for placental abruption. And as soon as I gave birth to her, I knew I had a placental abruption. I looked at my doctor out of Elmhurst Hospital, Dr. Martinez, and I said to him, that's an abrupted placenta. And he was like, no, everything's fine. And I'm like, I look at Orlando and I look at him and I look at the placenta. I'm like, are you sure? Because I have 2 other children and the placenta doesn't look like that. You know, the placenta comes out intact. It almost looks like how they teach you a kidney looks, you know? And it's like enclosed in this kind of like tissue. So I knew mine was in pieces all over it and ruptured. And I knew that there was an increased amount of danger because when you retain placental fluid, you need to have a surgery to remove it. If you don't, your body begins to, as it deteriorates and dies inside of you, your body begins to attack it as a foreign substance in your body. And how does our body empty itself of foreign substances? An increase in mucus, an increase in saliva, an increase in blood, bleeding, etc. and so forth. Our body fluids increase so that we can void whatever it is that our body is rejecting. So 2 weeks almost, or maybe 3, I returned to Northwestern 3 days after I got home from the late postpartum hemorrhage. But Alexis is born. The next day, I find out Viviana and Lewis have chickenpox, and they came to see her on the day she was born. They got to hold her, and then my ex Lewis's mom goes, "Oh my God, los dos niños ya tienen chickenpox. Están en el cuarto, no te preocupes, Heather, todo está bien. Tú tienes que, to rest. You just had a baby. So I know you're worried, but just don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to take care of them." That was my mother-in-law, Consuelo. And my mother-in-law and father-in-law were always very hands-on with the children, and the fact that I had no car and I lived in Chicago, and they would drive without complaining every single day to pick them up and take them to school for me and then drop them back off to me. So I never, ever, ever tripped out on my ex, Lewis, their father, to do more because, as I said before, people can only do what they can do. And Lewis has circumstances and situational circumstances that have not allowed him to get a job that pays him much more than minimum wage. So if he can support my children when they're there with him, and his parents, whether they help or not, it's none of my business, but if they can support them while they're over there, I have no right to complain about it or take him to court or do anything like that, because I'm supporting them when they're with me. Why would I ask him to continue supporting them, when he can barely do it? If he's living in abundance, it's a different story. If you see your wife struggling or the mother of your child struggling and you're living in abundance, then you absolutely, need to pay more money. But that wasn't the case for me. So I'm working full time. I have these children who I love so much. I'm full time in school, and I realized that I cannot get a nursing degree unless I'm able to complete clinicals. So I transferred my major to new business development and healthcare administration, law and ethics. I graduated a course called First Institute, which was solely focused on billing, coding, and morals and ethics. It was a 9-month program dedicated to 3 individual trimesters, 3 months with coding, 3 months with billing, 3 months with medical law and ethics. On top of that, you add in the 4 years of community college and then university, all with healthcare administrative majors. That puts me in a pretty good spot to be able to get shit done at Northwestern or for any, medical conglomerate. At Northwestern, I was hired 1 week prior to the merger of Medicare, or maybe not merger, but to Medicare or the government becoming contractually involved in monitoring electronic medical records. What do I mean by that? Prior to the day that I started, there were very few doctors who had made the switch over to EMR, electronic medical record. Most people in their offices were running standard paper charts, which you can get chart notes anywhere. They're very basic. They ask patient vitals are at the top, patient demographics are above that, and then the problem list. And it's like, you triage the patient. Head, ear, eyes, nose, throat, review of systems is what that's called. Chief complaint, progress, I think it's progress, surgical history, past medical history, and they're all abbreviated usually, HX for history. What else? What else would there be? Medications, problem list, review of systems, vitals, whatever. So all of the same thing that was on the paper, it was being now monitored by the government and needed to go into a computer system. There were numerous computer systems on the market, and doctors had a little bit of freedom in choosing which one they wanted to go with. But when you work with Northwestern, you have zero control at all over your practice. And that's any single medical facility. Once you become a doctor, you are for one of those facilities, you don't get to say, well, I don't like this EMR, let's switch. You could say it, but they're probably not going to listen. They have their administration. So once it becomes this business thing where the owner is no longer concerned for business and bedside manner, but business is business and bedside manner is bedside manner, it's very tricky. It's very, very tricky. So the doctors get Athena is what they ended up going with, but we still had Epic access. If you know anything, if you're from the medical kind of industry, you understand what I'm talking about. Epic is an inpatient program. It has more, in my opinion, benefit for larger hospital systems than Athena. Athena was almost like playing a video game. It was so user-friendly and easy to use. I would recommend it for any small office. It's extremely customizable. It was just a very, very good program, very easy to learn. So I get hired at Northwestern to work with one doctor, and she was an endocrinologist, or is an endocrinologist. Really cool lady, not too much older than me, by the book, but not uptight, just a cool person to work with. That was probably the best doctor I could have gotten. Could not be more grateful for the time that I spent with her. She would listen to me. She was just a really good mentor to me. She would hear me and understand me and give me feedback that was not biased and very factual in a way that I always wished I could have received from my parents. But they either didn't understand what I was asking or were too compassionate or empathetic to the situation to give me a response that was not from a place of bias. So I was really grateful for that relationship. But it was not long after I accepted the position with her that a whole bunch of assistants started getting fired. And they're like, well, we need you to take another doctor, and help this other doctor temporarily. Well, do you think you can handle taking 2 more doctors temporarily, but they have a clinical nurse, so you'll still have work, but she helps with the admin part? And I'm hired on a negotiated rate to work as an assistant admin for, the only admin for my doctor. But as an assistant, clinical, I did injections, I did triage, I did diabetic education, as well as administrative. And that was the rate that I negotiated per hour for my work, to work with that one doctor. But within the first month or 2, I had already taken on 5 more doctors. And most of the assistants there were not cross-trained, clinical and administrative. They were simply one or the other. So the way it works is there's a lab, and then there's the administrative portion of the office, and then there's the back office, which is clinical. The lab is clinical, the exam rooms are clinical, our pods or offices or workspaces, whatever we had, as well as that of the doctors, were administrative. So that's kind of the separation. You're going to find, what's the difference? You're going to find pens and staples in one space. You're going to find needles and biohazard, equipment in another space. And so I was working all over the place, and I was doing so much, and I was doing great. I never got in trouble. I never got, told that I was doing something wrong. I don't remember being reprimanded. I started having emergencies as soon as I got there. There were numerous fires that needed and required my attention within the first 3 months, but my manager was really, really understanding and cool about it, and I somehow made it through that probationary period and never got another reprimand until the day I walked out. Now, when I joined them, they were using paper charts, and all the doctors were filling in these paper charts. After they were done with the paper chart, they would kind of be reviewed by the billers, because there would be a CPT code along with ICD codes that needed to be submitted to their insurance to get, paid. So the doctors would simply fill in like bubbles. Okay, I did this. It was a level 1 visit, right? Or a level 5 visits. It's 1 to 5 as far as how much you can bill. So they would submit a level 1 visit, meaning they spent like 15 minutes with the patient over the phone, didn't do much, and it was an established patient. That would return like maybe, let's just say $50 per visit. But if you have a new patient and you coded at a level 5 visit, meaning you spent up to 45 minutes with the patient, or your staff spent that much time with the patient, as well as they had lab work, as well as this is going to require you to review, how comprehensive the appointment was, as well as they're new rather than established, you'll get paid higher. So the insurance portion and the coding portion is very, very important, because we need to code it appropriately to get enough money back to compensate all of the staff in the office, the doctors, the billers and coders, the front office staff, etc., and so forth. So I would never really see the charts during those periods. The charts would go, I would pull the charts, I would identify, not much from the information. I would kind of just look over anything that the doctor might need, like a new incoming test result from the last time they saw the patient, and then just put the charts in the doctor's office with a copy of their schedule. Well, literally within the first month, they're like, Medicare passes all this regulation, and they're like, look, we're not paying you guys shit unless you have electronic medical records. And in addition to that, if you don't, they straight stood on everyone's neck, the government. They're like, if you don't get these electronic medical records, not only are we not paying you shit, we're going to fine your entire practice. One fine for every single doctor that you have. I'm putting a face mask on. Sorry, guys. So all of a sudden, the administration is faced, and the doctors, with this tremendous amount of pressure to take every single chart. Now, I don't have one doctor anymore. I have 5. And to abstract the information that we need from the paper chart into the electronic medical record. On top of doing so, we have to learn a completely new software, Athena. On top of that, I was only with them for a month, so I was a baby. I had no idea about Epic. I had just started training on Epic, and I was brand new out of school, right? So I have 3 children at home. I'm in school full time. I'm at work while Northwestern is implementing electronic medical records, transferring all the patients for 5 doctors' caseloads, full-time, very busy doctors, into electronic medical records. Somehow I managed, right? I'm still paying rent. I'm still doing everything. Can you stop spraying that at me? It's really hot. No, that. Can you spray it like a little bit that way or aim it or whatever? Thank you. No, keep it on. I need it on. But just put it on over there on the cool one. On the cool one. Please. Thank you. So I was very ambitious back then. Like, I truly felt like there was nothing I could not accomplish. Like, I felt like I got this. Like, without a problem, I've got it. And within a month of taking on all those doctors, I was immediately telling management, like, look, this cannot be a permanent thing. Because I do have it, right? I'm doing it. But it's exhausting me and draining me. And I'm young and intelligent and I can barely keep up. So, long story short, I ended up staying with all of those doctors and only getting more doctors. They never once took a single doctor away from me. Not one. Like I said, I got more and more doctors no matter what I did or said. And it became my job to basically teach myself how to be a doctor. And I did so by reviewing every single note that some of the most intelligent doctors I've ever met have left. Doctors, you know, who have written things and seen patients for 30, 40 years, and who know the teachings of medicine from Harvard and Yale and all of these Ivy League schools from 40, 50 years ago, you know, and then doctors as new as the doctor that I worked with, my main doctor, who was fresh out of school as a doctor, and I was her first, her first practice was there with me. So it was very interesting, and I loved it, and I learned a lot. And you would open up the charts, and what did that entail? Extracting this detailed information. You open up these charts, these paper charts, and you copy down. First of all, doctors cannot write for the most part. It's terrible, their handwriting. So you first have to figure out how to learn and decode. Once you learn your doctor, you know, and it's like second nature, but you have to decode this writing, and then you have to go through and manually enter every problem this person has ever been diagnosed with by code, by CPD or ICD-9 code. So if they had surgery, it'll be a procedural code, and if they have a diagnosis, it'll be an ICD-9 or an ICD, whatever the year is now. That shows how old I was when I started my medical office training, doesn't it? But yeah, you know, it never really changes much. It just switches up a little. But at the end of the day, I worked a lot and I learned a lot, but I put a lot into that job and still remained, you know, a good, interactive, attentive mother, you know, and wife and woman. But nothing was handed to me. I went from having nowhere to live, or living with my ex's parents, to getting my own apartment, to getting a better apartment, to a better apartment, to a better apartment, to a better apartment and situation, even though the apartment was a little smaller. But I was single when I got the smaller apartment, and I needed the support from the family of my ex, to a 5-bedroom house, you know. And I thought once I got that house that my life was settled. Like, I thought, I have my new career path. I'm out of the medical field. I had been working in entertainment for quite some time. And when I say entertainment, I combine everything. Entertainment, like creative, sales, marketing, staffing, curating events, staffing those events, and business. And what's an example of that? Okay, well, staffing things like trade shows. You get a budget for a trade show. Okay, this is how much I'll pay you per person. And this is coming from my vendor. So I get a client saying, okay, Heather, I want you to put together a team and work an event. And I say, okay, great. This is my budget per person. This is what I can pay each person. This is what I can pay you. This is how much, you know, budget there is for this day and this day. On this day, we only want this many people. And they give you the schematics of what they're looking for. Now, you have to go through your private Rolodex of connections, find people who want to work these jobs, adjust how much you're willing to pay them, see if there's any room to wiggle, you know, because if you hire someone brand new with no experience, and you take on more responsibility, you can afford to pay yourself $2 more an hour, or even hire, you know, a second or third person. You have to be business savvy to understand how to make the money work for you and how to manipulate the budget in a way that makes the job easier and better. You know, you don't just want easier, you want easier and better. You know, you want a better return. You want to get the job done in a way that is better, right? So I was doing that for a while. I loved it. Every single job I've done after leaving the medical field, I've absolutely loved. And to be honest with you, in the medical field, if there was not so much pressure from the, like, if I just had the one doctor, I would have loved it. I would have loved it. But at the same time, you can't be burnt out and then keep going for years and expect to have the same enthusiasm, bedside manner, etc. and so forth. There has to be a point in time where you identify that you're being overworked, and then you are able to fix that situation. And for me, the only way I was able to was after literally complaining to HR for like a year, asking for raises. Like literally, I'd be in HR's office every other week, like, this is awful. I cannot take it anymore. I need more money. You know, I need more money. And then you combine that going to HR for a year asking for more money, or the pressure to be relieved, with having a late postpartum hemorrhage that almost kills you, and having to go back to work 3 or 4 days after that because you have no FMLA left and you have to pay your rent. And that was what happened to me. And I lasted at Northwestern after having my youngest child. I mean, I was pumping milk, so I'm breast pumping. I'm super behind on work because I have 5 doctors or 6 doctors at that time. Plus I'm doing diabetic education for the entire 20th floor, which was another 20 doctors, or I'm sorry, 23rd floor, which was another 20 doctors or so. And again, I love each task individually, but the accumulation of all of it together as only one person, it was just, what do you have left when you go home at the end of the day for your family, for your children? That was the measure that ultimately gave me the push I needed, because I was terrified to lose that job. You have no idea. I would tell my dad, like, Dad, every day I would call him crying at lunch and tell him, Dad, if I tell them I can't handle this work, they're going to give this job to someone else, and I need this job. You know, this is all I have. And I just felt so pressured to just show up in every way for everyone, as I have been doing since I was 14 years old. But who shows up when I need them? Really? Like, let's look at it. Let's analyze it. To this day, where am I right now, and who has shown up for me? You know? And so needless to say, there was a situation that ended up occurring. It was also one of gay rights, or gay, back in this period of time where lesbian, babe, what's the acronym? LGBTQ, tell me one more time. LGBTQ movement was like going super crazy. Well, whatever happens when you pay attention to something like that is that lawyers and like class action lawsuit shit, that gets really hot. They start seeing, oh, okay, well, we're gonna make a big lot of publicity about this shit, and then all these lawyers start creeping out of the woodworks, and before you know it, it goes from a movement that's morally based to one that is so corrupt and money driven. So I got put in charge. We got a new endocrinologist at the practice. We already had 4, but we got a new one, and I got put in charge of hiring his assistant, or interviewing his assistant, which I appreciated because it was my first time ever doing a formal interview, and I really wanted that experience. So I was super grateful for that. I didn't feel like that was being overworked. I felt like I was truly the best person for the job, because even our administration, as I said, it was so far separated from the clinical that they could not anticipate the needs of an endocrinologist. What the fuck does an office manager know about, you know, endocrinology? Not a fucking thing. And what do they know about the workflow? Nothing, you know? So I felt honored, almost like very grateful to be a part of that process. I knew what we needed in a candidate, and I also knew that hiring a candidate who could do what I was doing was going to help me out a lot, you know, and relieve a lot of that pressure. So I interviewed this girl. I think I interviewed like 5 people in total. The last one I interviewed, she's a lesbian, and she has a super lesbian haircut. And she walks in and tells me, and she's from an Ivy League college. I believe she was studying rocket science, and I'm not even kidding. And she tells me that she tells her name, and she says, if there's more than one, and then her name, I don't want to say her name on here. I don't want to bust her out, but if there's more than one, let's just call her Susie. If there's more than one Susie, you can call me Susie with the dykey haircut. And I just burst out laughing. And she was very forwardly a lesbian, you know, and she kind of dressed super dykey. But I just thought it was so funny because the climate and the political climate around this, say it again, babe? LGBTQ was so, like, can't even breathe, so elevated, so publicized, so much in the media, that she would walk in and say something like that. And I was like, I have to know this lady better. Like, I wasn't attracted to her or anything, just I wanted her on my team. I felt like she was smart, she was funny, and in conversation she could easily, you know, repeat back what I was looking for and offer suggestions even before she knew the exact job, you know. So I was like, fuck it, like, I'm gonna disregard that comment as being inappropriate and take it as being, you know, what we need in this, like, otherwise very stuffy work environment. There's a lot of laws and ethics when it comes to medical, so to find someone like that, I felt like it was a major win, and I hired her, or I recommended her to be hired on the spot. Fast forward 3 to 6 months later, she gets ill. Susie gets sick. And anytime one of, like, my team is out, I'm the covering. So if anyone on the endocrinology floor is gone, I'm automatically the assistant. That spread out to several other niches or specialties, which was not common for everyone. But for me, I was always the one, you know, that was covering. So she gets ill, and we're waiting on test results from her. And her endocrinologist was a new young guy. And I had also been his assistant before hiring this girl, Susie. So I take over for her. She's hospitalized, and I'm incredibly worried. Plus, I have a late postpartum hemorrhage. I just got back in the office 3 days ago. I'm breast pumping. This girl's, like, practically dying. Like, it's a serious illness, whatever she's got. I don't know the exact diagnosis. Her test results come through, okay? It's my job to go through this big bin of test results that come back before they get classified. If they are not automatically classified by AI, meaning if they are not attached to the patient's chart by AI, I have to go through, look for their name, the referring physician, the time and date of exam, and attach them to the patient's chart manually. We also do this for stat orders. So if an order is very important or time sensitive, it's called classifying the unknown box. So I'm literally sitting there classifying the unknown box, bleeding out, trying not to die, breast pumping milk, having 3 kids at home, 6 doctors, and not getting a fucking raise, by the way. And all of a sudden, I get called into HR's office. And it's, you know, the next day, and HR is saying, we have a timestamp of you entering this patient's chart. It was Susie. And not only had Susie placed a complaint against HIPAA violation against me, saying that I had classified and moved her test result and that I wasn't supposed to do that, which I was. It was my job. But that I also referred to her as Susie with the dykey haircut and that she was offended. You guys, I could not even believe it. So now, the same reason I hired this girl is the reason why I'm getting reprimanded. I could not believe it. I felt so undervalued, so unappreciated, so ignored. I just could not stand it. And I was told that I would need, in order to avoid lawsuit, Northwestern had to take action, which I understood, you know, but didn't agree with. And they're like, you have to come in on Saturdays for 2 weeks of sensitivity training. I could not, unpaid. I could not even, I'm like, okay. So I just got done giving birth to my 3rd child. I had a late postpartum hemorrhage and came back to work 3 days later, and am assisting with, at the very minimum, an extra 3 doctors than the one I was actually hired to assist on any given day. And you have the audacity to ask me to come in for free on Saturdays and take sensitivity training. Absolutely not. I'm not racist, I'm not sexist, I'm not against lesbians or gay or trans or any of that queer shit. As long as you don't do it to me, I don't care. Like, I'm not going. And I said nothing. I remember looking at, I think it was Colleen Doyle, or maybe it was Kelly, I don't remember. But I remember looking them dead in their eye and just calmly getting up saying, like, I think I was like streaming tears down my face, but like saying almost nothing, which is not how I usually am. And just like walked back to my desk, grabbed a printer box, loaded all my shit into it, clocked out, and walked out that motherfucker. I don't even think I said goodbye to my doctor. And that was not like me. Like I said, I had a personal relationship with these doctors. I went to very nice, fancy dinners that were drug rep sponsored with these doctors. Sometimes these doctors just took us out for our birthday. They bought us lunch when we didn't have money. Like, I felt like they were friends of mine, in a professional capacity, of course, but I felt very, very loyal to them. I felt awful just walking out, but I couldn't take it anymore. I was at that point dealing with the worst postpartum depression. I had just caught Orlando messaging online with a whole bunch of women. I had a late postpartum hemorrhage. I was overworked and underpaid. I had 3 infants, well, 1 infant and 2 children under 6. So 2 children under 6 and an infant baby, a late postpartum hemorrhage, a full-time career that I was working full-time and a half for the money that was, I probably got paid the least in my entire pod, or in the least 10, because the women who had been there so long that they just get raises incrementally just for existing and being there, you know, not for how much they knew or how much they put into the situation. And that always bothered me, you know, but I didn't have the balls to say anything while I was there. So I wanted to leave for a long time. Let me clarify. I never wanted to leave. I wanted to feel heard, respected, and like I was a valuable member of the team. I didn't feel that way. And so because I couldn't get any results after communicating, after submitting, you know, requests, etc. and so forth, my doctors would tell me every single time, I recommended you for a raise. I always recommend you for a raise. We never speak anything. When they come for your performance reviews, we review the fuck out of you, all 5s. Like, we love you. And because I would ask them, am I doing, what more can I do? You know, almost obsessively. And I finally just grabbed my shit, grabbed a computer paper box, packed it with all my stuff, and literally walked out. Just walked out. Not a plan, not a dollar, no car. Had to take that big box on the train. Like, had no idea what the fuck I was going to do. A newborn baby and 2 kids. And just caught the father of Alexis cheating on me. If you call it cheating, online talking, to me, I did. I had never seen a porn before. I was not at all involved in anything sexual. Never been a part of the nightlife. Never even been to a club. I believe with the exception of Martini Club once with Orlando's sister, uncle, and cousin for a birthday party. And Paris Club once with my own little sister for her birthday. Never, no other clubbing, no bar. I'd never been in a bar until I was damn near 30 years old. Just no history of or experience with the nightlife. And then I found myself in a position of desperation. And luckily, it was right around the time I got my income tax return. And I lived in the basement of, like I said, Orlando's grandma. So I had support there. I had, you know, I didn't have to pay my own electricity. I didn't have to pay my own gas. I had to pay only $200 a month. Rent, it was $400 a month. Orlando was expected to pay $200, and I was expected to pay $200. So I had enough money to pay that for a while, you know, and I could breathe for a second. And I thought that that's where it would end, you know, and that I would be able to get everything in control once I got that job at the eye doctor. But that's when I was kidnapped into the underworld. And that's the beginning of my novel. If you guys have read the intro, I know I've published it to my blog before. It's very gripping. A lot of people who have read it are super excited to read the novel. Xavier gets me. Now, understand, I've purchased at least 5 laptops or internet devices. Laptops, phones, not Chromebook. Chromebook. The Google one. Yeah. Chromebooks, whatever. They keep either getting stolen, broken, hacked, whatever the case may be. So I've handwritten the majority of my novel. At least the loose outline. 425 pages. I carry it around with me literally everywhere I go. It's right here. Everywhere I go. So Xavier the other day surprises me with a gift that he's been holding a keyboard. Not only that, someone dropped us off an extra phone, the phone I actually had through the state of Illinois before it got stolen when I was staying at the Franklin Park penthouse. So the same phone that they replaced that was stolen from me, and I get a Bluetooth keyboard, and I'm thinking we have a spot with access to electricity temporarily or whatever. 311 has been MIA for the longest time. All I can do right now is, you know, sit tight, make sure that I'm healthy, my baby's healthy, that I'm not getting too stressed out and freaked out. You know, and that I'm safe, and that I'm keeping myself as safe as possible from the harassment and abuse, while also being ignored blatantly by law enforcement, you know, and having that preoccupied fear that the system has been shut down because I've been unable to receive any sort of response from them. So we get here, I hook up the keyboard, add that to the list of devices that has been sabotaged and not working. This is the second keyboard Xavier's gotten from me. One was donated from a sponsor. Xavier bought this one for me. I believe a sponsor probably gave him money for it. I don't really know, but it doesn't work at all. It doesn't even connect to my iPhone, to the device that I'm using to write the book, nor to Xavier's device. So this is 4 years, you guys, of being displaced from my home, and since 2015 that I was kidnapped into the underworld. Police have been here every step of the way. I've written hundreds of police reports, no exaggeration. In the police reports, I've never been able to name a single person who's responsible because the situations that they put me in, it's impossible. Like having a beverage and being at a nightclub, but having a top on the beverage and having it like aside to the table using the restroom or bringing it with me and then somehow ending up high from something else while I'm working bottle service. How do I write that? I reported it and I went to the hospital to have my system cleaned out, but I don't know who did that. And because so many of the situations are like that, they're using me mostly for information rather than as a victim. But then I'm stabbed, so make sense of this. But then I'm stabbed, jumped and stabbed by 3 women. The driver of the car and the main aggressor came to visit someone in the prison, the same prison room that I was in with Dylan, who was my co-star on Love After Lockup. She checked in with an ID, and you have to give your license plate number every time you go into those visits. So on camera at a gas station, her and 2 of her friends jumped out of her car, stabbed me 11 times with screwdrivers, left blood splatter all over, in front of 3 to 5 witnesses, and an ambulance came to pick me up and took me to the hospital to be treated for my wounds, and no criminal charges were pressed. So I can't get victim services. Several $100s stolen from my car during that attack. Then I was bludgeoned by a man in broad daylight at the car wash with my own tire iron. Numerous witnesses, people got it on recording, was brought by ambulance to Elmhurst Hospital, had staples in the back of my head, huge lacerations and fractures all over my face, my legs. Stayed in the hospital 5 days, also had COVID, stayed in the hospital 5 days, and then drove to Tampa Bay, Florida for a job at Rose Bar, Tampa Bay. Was hired immediately, worked, even though I was fucked up. I mean, I was pumpkin head fucked up, you guys. And there's video of this posted on the One Heather GEE account, this account, the HLG Forever account. All of them have video of this, like very, very clear video. No arrests were made again. No charges were prosecuted, supposedly. How do you explain this? You know, I'm not an officer, I'm a civilian, and I'm a mother of 3 children. And it seems like it was incredibly premeditated because my children who have lived with me their entire lives on a full-time basis, meaning 4 or 5 days out of the week or more their entire lives, are strategically moved out of my home, placed with their fathers, and then I began being attacked on a regular basis, thrown out of my home, my car destroyed that I just paid $15,000 for, 21 jobs, legal W-2 jobs that I apply for, get hired at, and am working jobs at, suddenly develop some sort of crazy urgent issue and reason why I can't work there anymore. In 36 months, I've had 21 jobs. I don't have a problem keeping a job. I don't have a substance abuse problem. You know, I'm a mom. I'm Heather Gillespie. Maybe you have me confused with someone else. Some people call me Coco Chanel YSL. I have a company, GoPro Solo. It started out doing sexy content and all this coerced nonsense and evolved into the beautiful conglomerate that it is today. Fitness, fashion, family, and fun. Hello? It's been the same. It's never changed. It's just how have they been treating me and what access have I had to be creative? Okay. Can you keep the window open a little bit? Because it's really, really hot. Yeah. So, I don't know, you guys. I have called. Now, let's come to now. I got pregnant with twins on birth control. Got pregnant just this pregnancy on birth control. I only have sex with Xavier unless I'm being raped by force. And, you know, I've reported all that to law enforcement as well. I believe only in monogamous relationships. I don't believe in, you know, being sexually promiscuous. I never have in my entire life. As I've said numerous times, anytime I've slept with anyone, it's been, you know, a very premeditated, discussed, never impulsive, you know, situation that I don't take lightly. And I don't believe in meaningless exchanges of energy or giving that part of yourself to random people. Period. So that's that. I'm now 26 weeks pregnant. My relationship with my children, what has it looked like since filming the show? As I said, as the violence in my life increases, I get fewer and fewer face-to-face interactions with my children. I have at the very least gone every single month, once a month, to see them. And I usually have to do that walking with a cart that weighs between 200 and 300 pounds, including all the first 5 months of my pregnancy that I made that trip 2 times each month or more. I also at one point was balancing a bicycle on top of the cart and riding 100 miles, on that bicycle 3 months pregnant. There were several days we came from O'Hare, Rosemont area, all the way down to, all the way downtown and back. So I've been very, very active and exercising and staying very, very healthy. I am a weightlifter. I'm not a runner. I've never really been good at running. I have like a lot of cushioning like issues and joint pain when I run. So things tell you like if something that you try is not making you stronger and is causing you pain and degeneration, that you should not do it, right? So why would I run? I like low impact cardio like stairs or swimming. I love to swim. I was on the swim team as a young child, so I've always been a swimmer, and that's how I stay active. With regards to my physical activity and how it affects my ability to do anything, it affects my ability to do nothing. When I had a gym membership, I still saw my children more than I do now and spent all the rest of my time in the gym. So since they've destroyed my ability to have a gym membership, and literally followed me to about 7 different gyms, stealing my membership, literally, I have just been doing that, walking with this heavy ass cart while I'm pregnant. It's fucking awful. I mean, it's awful. I am grateful for my health and I'm grateful to be, growing a strong, healthy baby. But it's awful. It's boring. I like to work out. I lift weights. That's healthy too. I don't understand whose nefarious plot is affected negatively or adversely by me being able to be who I truly am. But they don't like it. They do not like it when I do things that make me healthy. And I don't know why. In addition to that, I've had problems. So the first year of this, I would go pick up my kids all the time. Even if we just sat in my car and like watched movies on my phone or went to go grab food or took a drive, I was used to having them with me every single day, and that's what I wanted to continue. I never expected that I would still be homeless 4 years later. I don't know how this is legal, ethical, moral. It's not, and it's not. I've gone to petition the court locally numerous times, at least 10 times, been blatantly ignored, got a new apartment, a studio that I thought, again, a representative from either the state or some sort of advocacy program presented me with. Just as Xavier, approaches me and says that he knows about the situation and is here to help me, that was the case with everyone else who approached me. They knew about the struggle that I was facing, and they said that they were sent there specifically to help. And I assumed that it was, that. There are many different places that I've been, about 40 in the last 4 years, and I have a very, very detailed summary of every place with dates, addresses, and names. Of where I've stayed, so there is nowhere. In addition, I have forensic accounting by means of my debit card. I have bank statements already printed out with me from the years 2018 through present. So I have all of that every time I've used my debit card. In addition to that, I have had a link card since the time Dylan was released. So I didn't have one for many, many months before he was released from incarceration. But I did go and get one when he went and got one upon his release. When you spend money on groceries, through a link card, that transaction is also recorded. So in order to keep, and you can use it in all 50 states. So everywhere I've been and the length of time I've been there is very easy to track. There should be no question, and that's relevant and important because, as I said before, I don't have any drug issues. I don't have any criminal history. I've never been imprisoned for any length of time. At best, I've been accused or arrested for driving or some sort of ticket, and that's it. I have no criminal record. So you could look that up, and there is nothing there. And that's very important and relevant because when you're going through a list of reasons how a person could end up in a situation like this, at least for me, a very analytical person who's, logical and practical for the most part, I'm trying to look for what caused this so that I can look for a reverse to that, so a sort of anti-venom to whatever has caused this situation and the repetition and victimizations and physical abuse and sexual abuse that remains not just unhealed, but completely unaddressed. The only time I'm able to bring it up is when I feel as though it's happening again. So it's like Jordan Peterson said, you don't begin healing a person of their trauma while they're still being traumatized. And I've never heard a truer statement. But again, 311 is the city's program for assisting with homelessness, even though I feel as though the city owes me a big, huge check for throwing me out of my apartment in the first place, while Dylan was using every drug that there is on parole, living with me in our home, our family home that we shared together and lived in together. He should have been removed, and my children and I should have been left alone. There was no reason for what took place. It was incredibly illegal, unlawful, unethical, immoral, and corrupt. And as I said before, I believe that the whole reason for it is because of all of the nefarious involvement that Dylan had in working cases for the state. And they're trying to say, or the feds, they're trying to say that he is in debt because of all of the fraudulent parties that he threw in hotels, racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars of fraud. But in my opinion, that has nothing to do with me or my children. And so that should be, if that's truly the issue, that should be removed from mine and my children's lives. And we should not be on the hold for any sort of that indebtedness, right? Why would you throw an innocent woman and her children into the street if you have a problem with Dylan? It just doesn't make sense. And the state of Illinois has been completely unresponsive in addressing any of it. And I'm not irrational. I'm not unapproachable. I have called very, very calm more than 75% of my calls. I will admit that I have been flying off the fucking handle heated many of the calls, as any rational person would be if they just discovered that they were being sexually assaulted again, or falsely implicated in crime, or held apart from their child for any length of time. Now, fortunately for me, there has never been a period of more than a few weeks when I've not been in contact via FaceTime video with all of my children, with the exception of Alexis. Beginning May 26th, Xavier and I walked out there to drop off groceries and have lunch with my daughter. Xavier never joins me in these meetings. He just stays nearby because I was not ready, and I'm still not ready to introduce my children to anyone until I know that I have a stable living situation and a stable partnership. Am I grateful for any sort of protection I've gotten from Xavier or assistance with meals or whatever? Absolutely. Does that mean that that's all I need out of a relationship to bring that person into the lives of my children? Absolutely not. There's a whole list of other things that I need. So he would sit a block away and allow me to go with Alexis an hour or two, at a time. I didn't have a car anymore, so we couldn't sit in my car and watch films. We were very exposed. And at the time, I was very under pressure, and I have been ever since. So what does that mean? That means that people who are posing as some sort of investigators, whether it's PIs, government authorities, law enforcement, or the FBI, following me, making very forward and abrupt commentary around me, sometimes even threats. And I'm reporting it to police because they never identify themselves as to what agency they're working with. And police are simply collecting online crime reports or in-person crime reports and doing nothing about it, saying that they need more proof in order to do anything. So I started recording everyone. That's all these highlights and for the record sections. If I noticed a car that would be around me on more than one day, I would record it. I don't know who they are, but I recorded them. If I would notice that someone was chasing me, harassing me, or stalking me, in addition to the police reports, I would post a video. I would record it and post it here, right? So 90% of the abuse that I described can be proven, at the very least, beyond a reasonable doubt, by going through the videos, looking at the license plates of cars, looking at the repeat characters who continue to show their faces in one way or another, in the background even, and going to them and asking them, what is your involvement? I can't do that as a non-police officer, as a civilian. I don't have access to any sort of personal Rolodex of people. I can't put someone's driver's license plate number in a system and find out where they live and go question them. I'm not an officer. I'm a civilian. So whose role is it to find out who those people are? You guessed it. That would be law enforcement. So a lot of my resentment in this situation, I'm not saying that the law enforcement personally held me down and let me get raped, but they definitely played a part. Most definitely played a part. In addition to that, into having all the proof, I've also created a very reliable timeline, as I said, based off of financial documents, based off of postings and narratives that I've written, poems that I've written with coding in them on some of the photos, If you go back to the One Heather GEE account, I have been recording everything that has taken place, the way it's made me feel, why I felt that way in one way or another, on every one of my postings. So you might not be able to understand it, and you might need to ask for more information if you have questions, but it's all there. I have never once been in any way anything other than completely transparent and eager to return to my life as a mother, whether that's by being a full-time employee and supporting myself alone, or whether that's being a stay-at-home mother and my husband supports us, or whether that's by winning all of these lawsuits and that money is what supports us. I don't know, but I do know that mercifulstorm.com, Do You Doll, GoPro Solo, these are all endeavors that 100% have humongous ROI for any reasonable investor. There are so many ways to make profit off of all of these companies that I have poured 10 plus years of hard work into. I don't understand why I continue to receive only hatred in my inbox. It does not make sense. If you don't think this is a profitable business endeavor, then just keep going. But why are you stalking me? Why are you calling me out of my name? Why are you enticing me to argue or behave in ways that I don't believe in behaving in? Why are you forcing me to question my safety and security on almost a daily basis? Why are you following me around, breaking my tent, urinating into my gym shoes, things of that nature? I don't hurt anyone. I've never done anything so petty in my entire life as to the things that have been done to me. In addition to having my belongings urinated on, my tent broken, 6 tents I've purchased in the last 2 years that Xavier and I have been outside on and off. It's been a solid period of 8, almost 9 months. February 15th is the first night that we spent outside of this year, 2023, and we remained outdoors until today. We have not had a single night in a hotel, not a single night indoors, nothing since February. Prior to that, we were inside only because I was working full-time at Getir and I was paying for our Airbnb. We had an Airbnb that I paid for 100% of the time out of my check. 3 weeks after I lost my job at Getir and I was still recovering from losing the twins that I went into labor with preterm, December 26th of 2022, Xavier and I spent 3 days together at Swedish Covenant Hospital recovering from that, and then his father funded our next 3 Airbnbs. After that, my Airbnb account was suspended for no reason. Every single Airbnb was paid for by my debit card and cash that either was deposited from my job at Getir or from the money that Xavier's father had given us. I don't do fraud. I've never done fraud. I've spent 8 to 15 hours a week and I wrote this down just to verify how many hours, each week for the first 4 months after Airbnb suspended my account, looking for resolution and understanding. To this day, they have given me neither. They have given me neither. Simply disconnected my account. It's not there anymore. How? So I'm not being prevented from parenting my children because I don't have custody. I do have custody. I carry my custody agreement around with me on my phone. Me and my exes split 50-50 custody. We have joint custody. I am the primary custodial parent of all 3 children. And I have not been being treated like it. When I go to the courthouse and ask them, they say nothing or make up some excuses to pass the buck. None of any of the civil rights violations that I've incurred or violations to my personal safety or body have ever been heard in court at all, anywhere. Yet when I went to report being raped by force, I was put in handcuffs by Elmhurst Police and transferred to Lombard Police Department on a warrant for not stopping at a stop sign, failure to yield, which was also corrupt. All of it. Law enforcement are the ones who hooked that safe place up to stay with Andy. They knew where I was. It was all a game to them. And I have been looking desperately for my lawyer to get involved, but no communication has been allowed to him. Please make this make sense if you can, because you can. The purpose in me disclosing my work history and my list of experience is that I need employment immediately. I am about to be 7 months pregnant. I can do anything. I can be an influencer and do DIYs. I can be a marketer and create online social media management. I can create anything. I can write. I can make content. I can literally do dollar store specials. All of those ideas that you people see there are my ideas. I curated all of them, and I have my notes and dates from the time that I wrote them down and the things that I've done. These people who they're putting in my newsfeed 100% were inspired.